Today we are checking out those two here, the Oppo Find X9 Ultra versus the Vivo X300 Ultra. And you can see the camera specifications already on board. Almost 1-inch type sensor, basically the same sensor, just 35mm specialty. And we have the specialty on the Oppo with its 10 times optical. And of course we start off with the front-facing videos. Front-facing video here on both, and what you can see immediately is that we have a bit of overexposure there in the background on the Vivo. We have on the Oppo the possibility to zoom in, even 2x if I want to. There's no option, let's go to the ultra wide angle, to do so on the Vivo. Actually, that's not true. On the Vivo you have the ability to do this before recording, and I think there's pinch to zoom options as well when you're recording, but there's no button to do that. Both feature autofocus, so yes, the Vivo has autofocus, and yes, the front-facing camera of the Oppo also has autofocus. So that's quite cool, and both even have the ability to switch lenses, and you can see why I'm standing still now, because someone is trying to move here. Anyway, the ultra-wide angle is used on the Vivo by default for recording, and the main camera sensor, the 23mm one, is used on the Oppo to record. Let's switch to the ultra-wide angle as well, to be fair and square. We have a half-inch sensor, or almost a half-inch sensor, a bit bigger on the Oppo, where we have a 1/1.28-inch size sensor, way larger sensor on the Vivo. But at daylight, I don't think you notice much of a difference between those two. Do you? Timmy is here with me, of course, and yeah, this is the ultra wide angle. Let's go to 35mm on the Vivo, and we want to go 1x on the Oppo. They can see the difference in terms of field of view a little bit, especially with this car, for example, how much closer it is. Of course, on the Oppo I have also the ability to go to 35mm. Now we have roughly the same field of view. It's cropped in then. Which one has better stabilization? It should be the Oppo, because it has a wider field of view by default. It's just cropping in, and stabilizing the lens is much easier if it's not too far away. So what do you think? Which one is performing better here in this situation? 35mm for vlogging? I don't think so. It's borderline usable on the Vivo here with the main camera sensor, only if you have wider mode activated. So that means like better, worse stabilization actually. And yeah, the crop in of the Oppo still should be looking a little bit better, because by default we have a wider lens. What do you think about this one here? Bokeh-licious, I think more on the Vivo. Ultra wide angle now on both. We perform a little zoom test. We go directly to 10x on both. So which one had the fluid animations? I think that should be very comparable. This is 10x now. Dedicated lens on the Oppo, on the Vivo, just cropping in from its 85mm one. You can even zoom in further, up to 30x here on the Oppo, and on the Vivo 690mm, which should be also 30x. Which one is sharper? Which one appears to be better? Which one is more detailed? Like I said, dedicated lens on the Oppo, that's hopefully used also for this 10x zoom shot. Let's go back to 1x maybe on both. Which one has the smoother animations? Which one is looking better? And now the ultra wide angle, hopefully capturing me. The Vivo this time around I set to less stabilized, so we get an ultra wide angle of view. So really, because otherwise it is cropping in a little bit there, to compare which one has a wider field of view. This is the ideal vlogging lens for both, I would say. And even though the Oppo has a little bit of a smaller sensor, I think it's doing quite good in this situation with the changing light, with very harsh sunlight. HDR is working fine, but also the Vivo is doing a very nice job. And especially when it comes to a bit lower light situations, it's doing a fine job. And also towards the edges, it's pretty sharp, and all over across the board, it's a main camera sensor basically that we have here, where the Oppo is a bit of an afterthought. So what do you think? Which one is working better here? We take a look at the photos. We start off with the main sensor on the X300 Ultra and a crop of the main sensor on the Find X9 Ultra to achieve 35mm. From the colors you see that we have a warmer kind of calibration here on the Find X9 Ultra, where the X300 Ultra has it a little bit cooler. Detail levels, it appears to be, when I zoom out a bit because the Oppo is creating 25 megapixel pictures where it's 12 on the Vivo by default. Detail levels, identical. This is one interesting thing where I would say you really have to pixel peep, and I don't see a difference between the main 35 versus a crop in 35. Then macro shots. Macro shots are a win for the X300 Ultra. It has more contrast, that it's helping with especially this situation with a little bit of adding shadows to this strawberry here. Even though it might be not very realistic, it is helping the whole scene to make this strawberry to stand out, where it's a bit flat looking there on the Oppo. The Oppo again 70mm utilizing its telesensor, where 85mm on the X300 Ultra is utilizing its telesensor. It's a bit more sharpened up on the Vivo for sure, it's a bit softer on the Oppo, and we have almost the same cutout because I think the Oppo was still doing, no, it was doing 12 megapixels in this case, but it is sharper here on the X300 Ultra. And usually where the Vivo struggles, where the Oppo struggles a lot is getting a sharp shot for the telesensor because the sensor is so large and the focus fall off is so fast. We check out this situation here. I took multiple shots with the Vivo because I never got the sky exposed correctly, because the sky is exposed correctly. On the Find X9 Ultra, this is the real blue that we saw. It's way too bright here. Then also the greener here, even though I used Zeiss natural colors, it's way too wet. Like it should be this dry, this more, this green. And the other thing that you see in the greenery is the much more applied sharpening by default on the Vivo. HDR kind-wise, basically identical there. On the Vivo, we can also go and check out Refined. Refined, I was very surprised how bad it is because everything is overexposed here now. And you see here, it's getting a bit darker here, like HDR is weaker. This helps a little bit with the blue here in the sky being a little bit better, more towards what the Oppo is showing, which is more accurate. And then we have, of course, Vivid, which looks like this. Then the color here of the sky is even more accurate, but this looks all just too much processed, and no, you don't want to use it. So most of the time I stick to Zeiss natural colors, and with Oppo I stayed with the defaults. When we take a look at the selfies here with the portrait effect, you see warmer selfie on the X300 Ultra, a little bit cooler here and more sharper at 21mm versus 24mm. I think in terms of sharpness, details, levels, even though sometimes I have the feeling that the Vivo is a bit more artificial with my eyebrows there, I think both are on par. It's just a bit sharper looking on the Oppo there that you can see, and the rest is almost identical. Just the cutout I like a little bit better on the Vivo because all the little hairs are just cut out right, where the Oppo is just like, yeah, removing them from my hair. For my hat basically, yeah. And then we have 10x shot, which is a dedicated sensor on the Find X9 Ultra, and you can see it clearly here that in direct comparison, even though the Vivo one is not bad, it is losing against the Oppo. You can even see the car dealership there under the license plate, which is Lacazette here, and you can read it there because the detail is there, where here it is unreadable on the Vivo. When we take a look at the ultra wide angle here, both struggled with the colors of the sky, way too punchy and also way too weird looking there. The difference here is also clearly seen, again 25 megapixels on the Oppo. Warmer colors here on the Vivo, and this time I think a bit more accurate there, and the ultra wide angle is a win for the Vivo ultimately. Look at the taillights here, look at the background. Here way softer. It's not only sharpening applied, it's way more details, bigger sensor that we have on the X300 Ultra, and you can see it here as well. Even though here in this example you see how much over sharpening there's applied on the X300 Ultra. In my personal opinion, I would like tune it down a little bit. Not completely, like some people like it completely soft to make it more look like a DSLR like shot, but I like it a little bit more, a little bit sharper, so maybe going to 50 or something would help here. Basically what the Oppo is doing is pretty nice looking, not looking too over sharpened in my opinion. In terms of colors, the Oppo more accurate here with the warm colors of the roof. We had a bit lifeless here looking on the X300 Ultra with the Zeiss natural colors. Then some people requested it, I'm doing it now, testing the speed of the camera when you want to just take a snapshot. Take them out of the pocket and take a snapshot. Taken at the same time, you see the shutter speed is much slow. It is a bit slower on the X300 Ultra, so yes, the truck is past this light already, where here it is not. But you see how much more details there are and how sharper it looks like on the Vivo in comparison to the Oppo. If you have to crop in, I would definitely take the Vivo, even though sometimes it looks a bit over sharpened, and yes, even though sometimes it's a bit slower there than the Oppo. And for sports and actions, maybe the Oppo might be better, but it could be also that the Oppo is automatically going into sports mode when such fast moving subjects are coming, and where the detail levels automatically are a bit turned down. But that the Vivo can maintain such a high detail level without going to an extra sports mode and being just a few seconds or milliseconds later there with taking the shot is also quite fantastic. So here probably a win for the X300 Ultra. Then I was a bit disappointed by the Oppo's 6x versus the crop in from, I think, 2x crop in on the 85mm that we have on the Vivo. Much sharper, much more detailed. Yes, it's over sharpened, especially when you look at the green grass and compare it here. It's a bit over sharpened there for sure, what we usually have, but it's also more detailed. Look at the donkey there in the corner. It's almost unreadable here, even if I go to and crop in even further, 170mm here, so we can compare them a little bit better side by side. You see that it's getting marginally better there on the Oppo, but it's still, I think, a win for the Vivo, even though it's looking a little bit more processed and more sharpened up. But when you go to 85 versus 85, this means we can crop in on the 70mm of the Find X9 Ultra a little bit. Here, surprisingly, I think that the Vivo is losing against the Oppo. And this is not only the colors there that are, again, the greens are a bit too punchy. It's the sharpness and detail level is almost identical. It's just more sharpening applied against, again, on the Vivo, and a little bit more contrasty look. But the colors more accurate on the Oppo again. And here you see the artifacts there. The bokeh looks way smoother there on the Oppo in comparison to the Vivo, where the Vivo's sharpening algorithm, yes, you can tune it down and probably it might look a little bit better, but by default you get like it's trying to sharpen the bokeh, which, yeah, if you look closely at the Oppo, is also trying a little bit, has those problems there, but it's way less pronounced. So you have to tweak the Vivo's sharpening algorithm. Otherwise, if you take them out of the box and just shoot, then the Oppo gives you the better picture there for sure in these situations. Then we have crop in of the ultra wide angle on the Vivo X300 Ultra to reach 28mm, which is 2x crop in on the 14mm, where we used on the Find X9 Ultra there's a crop in, slight crop in on the 24mm main camera sensor. And here, yes, just like you can think, first of all, the colors a bit better on the Oppo and more too contrasty on the Vivo. And the Vivo is too much sharpening applied again, and it's looking a little bit too artificial there in comparison. And even if you change the profile to refined, you see what it's doing. It's not getting better. I don't get it where people are saying refined looks better. I don't really. It's making things a little bit brighter, a bit more lifeless actually, because it's taking the color out of the shot. That helps eventually here with the green grass, because it's looking a bit more realistic, even more realistic than what the Oppo is doing there. But still is not winning against the Oppo. And then a bit of an HDR test. Both are doing a fine job, I would say, but here we have a bit more overexposure. We have chromatic aberrations there on the Oppo, where I think that the 35mm sensor here on the Vivo is doing a finer job. But I'm not sure where these stripes are coming from here. You see those? If they are in the sky, those stripes? Well, probably they have to be in the sky. I don't see them here. Anyway. This is the normal Vivo X300 Ultra Zeiss natural shot. This is the vivid shot, where everything is brightened up, so HDR is more pronounced, and we have a little bit better HDR here, but then one stripe is disappearing. It's a bit weird. And then we have the refined shot that has like, less HDR and everything a little bit overexposed there. So yeah, the main camera sensors are very comparable here, also in terms of HDR, I would say. And I would just say basically identical, slight favorite maybe to the X300 Ultra there, because it took a bit better shot there and has a bit better HDR, at least when you use Zeiss natural colors. When we go to the macro shots, again, you get a bit closer on the X300 Ultra, but you can get the 25 megapixel shot there on the Oppo, and then you have, when you go to 100% view, almost identical views there. Just again, the contrasty look and a bit more sharpening helps with the X300 Ultra macro shot. Then we come to this, which is an interesting problem that I encountered on the Vivo with how it presents its viewfinder. But let's take a look. Where I'm a bit disappointed is the preview. You see the preview is way too bright, and if I take the shot there and we'll take a look at the image, you will see that it looks completely different now. So the preview is not very accurate on the Vivo. You see that on the Oppo, the preview is quite accurate. If I go into photo mode, I go 3x, the preview is almost exactly how the photo will end up. So if I take the shot, and take a look at the shot, you see much more accurate, the viewfinder. And of course it's a comparison here, 70mm versus 70mm. That means it's a crop in from the main camera sensor on the Vivo, 2x crop actually, which is quite good and can compete with the dedicated 70mm one here on the Oppo. So the Vivo is doing quite a good job. It's just again the over sharpening that is like showing its thing there, but also a little bit of details like here, a bit softer looking there than on the Oppo, where it is something that you see clearly, but the rest here, when you take a look at, appears to be even sharper, but this is the sharpening, like I said. And yeah, I can imagine that some people might like the Vivo a little bit better there, which is quite fantastic. It's doing a fantastic job for what it's worth. And yeah, a few other shots there, just ignore them. Micro photography again of a flower here. You see the problem of the Oppo's larger sensor. It has an extra mode where you can see full clarity. It tries to get something which is close to what the Vivo is doing there, more in focus, because otherwise the focus fall of the larger sensor is quite dramatic and you might end up with things that are a bit out of focus. But here both are very nice looking, and it's a matter of style, where the Vivo, and it's not very realistic, but it's darkening the background a little bit and has more contrasty look, where the Oppo is more realistic but doesn't have this dramatic kind of look because it's not darkening the background so much. And in terms of bokeh, we have like square, and here we have a little bit of, I think I see balls here, bokeh balls. No, I might be mistaken, but yeah, this looks more square and this looks more ballish. When I do my videos, people are complaining, especially when it comes to the Oppo Find X9 Ultra, that by default it's using 25 megapixels. If I compare it to a 12 megapixel shot, I'm always zooming out, and this just means that it's looking a bit softer than the one that I'm comparing it to. And I will show you this here in this example. We have on the left the 25 megapixel mode, even though it's showing 33 point something megapixels, and here we have the 12 megapixel mode, so the standard and the more high quality one. And what you can see here, first of all, it is more cropped in, of course. And when you compare this more cropped in shot with this not so much cropped in shot, if you take a look at the sharpness, you will see, and it appears to be a bit sharper on the right. If I zoom out one time here, you will see that even then it looks a bit sharper on the right. But what about if we do it another way, a different way? So I go again here 100% view, and here I go one time in, which is now roughly the same. Now you see the big difference and where the 25 megapixel come into play. Yes, it is much softer, less detailed on the 12 megapixel shot. So this is a huge difference here. That said, because I know that some people will come up with, hey, why you didn't compare it with 12 megapixels with 12 megapixels? Let's compare 12 megapixels with 12 megapixels. So here we have on the left the Vivo X300 Ultra with its 12 megapixel mode and the 12 megapixel mode on the Oppo Find X9 Ultra. Yes, let's crop in a little bit. You'll see advantage optically. Yes, it's sharper, it's more detailed. Go out here one times. You see that in terms of sharpness and detail level, I would even argue when I go out here a little bit that the Oppo is a bit better. Why is that the case? It's physics, because the image viewer that I'm using here has to scale a little bit, and the scaling algorithms are almost all are using the same, but they are doing their best to maintain the quality, but they are not always able to do so. And the same goes not only for that, even if I would throw it into a video editor, it's also scaling, it's using the same scaling algorithms for this. You will notice the difference there. So if I have a higher zoom picture and I zoom out a little bit, it appears less sharp than the other one. That is just how it works here. Nevertheless, I wanted to do some comparisons. This one is like about this guy, because apparently the Vivo X300 Ultra said he is the main guy of the show and made the rest less sharp. Out of focus already there. And when we check this out, this is 70mm at 12 megapixels versus 85mm at 12 megapixels. When I zoom in here one time, you see, of course, the advantage of the optical zoom here. if I go out here one time, nice and sharp, and go out here one time, you see that almost identical, not much of a difference. But there's another way to do that. I can go and crop in the camera itself, and then we have 100 versus 100 and 85. And you see, yes, there's an advantage on the Vivo. It's a bit sharper there. What does it say now? Is the sensor a little bit better there on... My mouse is flying away. My mouse there. Is the sensor better, the 85mm sensor, than the 70mm cropped in? Of course it has to be, isn't it? In 12 megapixel mode that is the case, but and then we come to this later. Let's go and first check out another thing that I noticed, and I want just to share with you. If you're photographing fish, I just came to happen to photograph a fish in a pond or aquarium. You see that I struggled with the Vivo a lot to get a sharp shot. This is the best one I could get, and nothing is really sharp. And the Oppo, just one time, and it's sharp. Yeah, this just as an example. And another example, ultra wide angle, because some people say, why should the Find X9 Ultra get so much less points in ultra wide angle than the X300 Ultra? The X300 Ultra has an almost perfect ultra wide angle, and you can see it as well. The lens coding is better. You see a bit of like smudging going on here. When I go in 100% view and 100% view, this is both 12 megapixel mode, by the way, you see how much less details there are on the Oppo. So yeah, clear win for the Vivo there. This is 10x versus 10x. Also, again, why is the Vivo on top in my camera ranking list? And it will end up on top of the camera ranking list because it is so damn good and versatile. If you go to 12 megapixel mode here on the Oppo Find X9 Ultra and compare it to the 10 times zoom 230mm, it's basically identical, even though it's a dedicated sensor that we have here. There's a bit more detail that you can see because it's brightening up a little bit. We have a bit of more contrasty look on the X300 Ultra. We know that. We know also the color signs, bit of difference, a bit more reddish here, a bit more pinkish. The Oppo tends to be more accurate with the colors than the Zeiss natural color mode that we have on the Vivo. And this is with its default mode, and it's a bit more contrasty. Granted, but where I was really shocked, and this is why I will lower the main camera points of the X300 Ultra below the Find X9 Ultra, is this shot here. You can clearly see that the Oppo Find X9 Ultra, with its main camera sensor, even cropped in, produces better HDR, has better HDR than the X300 Ultra. And this is the best HDR I could get. I promise you, refined mode is worse, way worse with HDR. Vivid mode is goofy because the stairs get red. And you can argue, hey, the Find X9 Ultra stairs are almost red. Yes, but the stairs should be a bit reddish there. And the sun is yellow and it's shining and casting yellow light. Where here it's like, oh, it doesn't really matter. Let's make it white. So there's a difference with that. And the best one is the Zeiss Natural, still with HDR on the X300 Ultra, I have to say. But it's still worse in comparison to the Find X9 Ultra. And behind me, I was taking this shot with the main camera sensor of the X300 Ultra and the Find X9 Ultra. Immediately behind me was a glass, so I could see the reflection of the viewfinders, because otherwise I cannot take the photos at the same time. And it was completely overexposed, the background, and my face was even a little tad darker than it should be on the X300 Ultra, where the Oppo is showing I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it's showing me basically the sort of shot that I will get without much processing time. Even if I click directly into the image, maybe a bit of sharpness, it's getting there, but the rest looks... And on the X300 Ultra, I had a completely overexposed sky in the background, white, everything, and you see it is struggling there. Both are struggling a little bit, but the Oppo is clearly better than the Vivo with its main camera sensor here. Also the detail levels here, look at the eyebrows, how much more redrawn, how much artificial they look like on the Vivo in comparison to the Oppo. This is also struggling probably with HDR because you see a little bit of the light going on, and also sharpening up too much. Yes, I tell you immediately, my conclusion, X300 Ultra will get less points with the main camera sensor than the Oppo Find X9 Ultra. Even though people tell me they use the same sensor. But it's not the same processing, and the X300 Ultra is doing it worse right now. Then another shot, quite interesting, with 85mm. It's a crop in on the X9 Ultra, and I want to show you this one, because people are saying, yes, the X300 Ultra has the better telesensor. And I want to argue with this and will tell you, nope. Not necessarily, always. It is not a huge difference between them two. And it's so much negligible, this difference, that I would tend to go with Oppo having the more clever solution there. And I will tell you why in a second. So first of all, let's take a look at this 12 megapixels versus the 85 millimeter, also 12 megapixels. When you go in here and check them out, you immediately would say, whoa, how much AI slop and sharpening there's applied on the Oppo. Rightfully so, it is just way worse. It's just like that you have focus fall off here, 85 millimeter, it's cropping in on the 70 millimeter, a bit sharper there. Granted. But let's go and take the same shot with 25 megapixel mode. So high-res shot, the default mode, and let's compare them side by side. First of all, the eye slop is still a bit present there, but it's mostly gone. Both have a little bit of eye slop, it's mostly gone. And now what happens, let's see, when I zoom out here on the 25 megapixel shot, I don't see much of an improvement. I would say it's almost the same. But if I go to 100% view here, and then I crop in a little bit here on this shot, I think it would be better if I didn't use 85 millimeter to demonstrate you, because it's a bit less sharp because it's cropping in on sensor wise already. But if I, oops, what did I do now? Deselect. When I go and crop in 1 times here and now compare them. Yeah. Way closer here between those two. And so much so that I would say the advantage that the 85 millimeter has, or should have, on the Oppo, on the Vivo actually, towards the Oppo, is gone with this kind of thing. So I'm arguing basically 25 megapixels 70 millimeter mode against 85 millimeter mode on 12 megapixel on the Vivo. The Oppo wins. This is what I'm arguing. You can challenge me down in the comments if you think something else. Now we have 47 2x crop with 1.5x crop on the main sensor. Besides color-wise, what do we see here? This is again at 25 megapixels. This here is like almost identical between those two. I would even argue it's looking a little better on the Oppo because of the in-sensor zoom, which usually works a little bit better. The Vivo is like to its old games, like sharpening things up, recreating eyebrows. The Oppo is also doing that, of course, but it looks more consistent a little bit. It's not too sharpened up, it's not too fake looking. Here, this is like, why is it so white? It should not be like this white. If everyone who saw the poster, it shouldn't be looked like that white. And what do we have there in the background here? Yeah, there was this little sign. Can you read it? Color-wise, again, the Vivo is too dark with the red because you cannot even read the Büroflächen, which are like the office rooms that are for rent there. But both basically identical there in this kind of shot. And this is a compliment for the Oppo Find X9 Ultra 2x crop, where it's only 1.5x crop on the X300 Ultra. But everyone knows technology behind it. 2x in-sensor crop is mostly a little bit easier done than 1.5x in-sensor crop. So yeah, that's this. And yeah, we have then another shot 35 millimeter at the high-res mode versus 35 millimeter native. And let's check this out. Let's go first on here maybe. Yes, at first glance it looks like soft, sharp. I go to the 100% view. And crop in a little bit to get like a little bit more, like then, you know, if I go here and I do this and I crop out a little bit, you see it is still less sharp, but it's very close between those two. Very close. But you see here, especially like, it's a bit, but when I go this 100% view and here 100% and I go beyond 100%, see how much more closer we are getting here between those two. Color-wise, yes, again, I think this is a bit too punchy there, the colors. It's looking very identical between those two. It's just when you go to the greenery where I would say, there you can see that it's a crop on the Oppo. Already, in-sensor crop. You're losing a little bit details and losing against the fine details that we can see here on the optics of the Vivo X300 Ultra. Then this shot, let's go through. Let's go to this shot here, and this is like trying to get the best shots out of them, the best modes, trying to experiment with modes. So I don't know if it makes sense, but humanistic street mode versus master mode, just to see what kind of style you get. The humanistic street mode has its own humanistic street style that apparently adds noise in there and is not so sharpened up. So this is why I tested them out here. But you see that in terms of color-wise, it is stylizing a little bit, having this little bit slight overexposure there. It's trying to pull, and less HDR, it's trying to pull a Xiaomi with Leica look there. Where here we have a little bit, it's not so sharp, but it is not so noisy as well. And it doesn't have to create this like kind of dreamy look. This is at the crop from the ultra wide angle on the X300 Ultra and the crop from the main of the Oppo. And they still can be very much compared at 12 megapixels, by the way, because the master mode is shooting in 12 megapixels there. And this is something that we have to check out also here, but this is not so interesting. Let's go to this shot here. This is again master mode, and this is the ultra wide angle with textured color profile to create a little bit of the vignetting to compare them. It's very yellow. I don't like the colors too much. I like the colors a bit more on the Find X9 Ultra, but come on, here you see the real deal. The difference why the Vivo is winning with its ultra wide angle so much against the Oppo. In normal photo mode, you don't notice that so much because so much heavily processing is applied on the Oppo. But here you see how much details there's lacking if they don't apply this heavy mode there. Just HDR seems to be a tad better. Like here, this stripe is not even visible of the sun. Here it is visible. So this is what I noticed there. So maybe a bit struggling there with HDR. I'm not sure. Maybe it's just the algorithm when it comes to struggling. And then this shot here, this on the Vivo, it looks perfect. It looks like, if you like Xiaomi phones, if you like Leica looks, like authentic look, then if you go to the Vivo X300 Ultra and you are trying to get a roughly same look, go to the textured color profile, you get this and you fall in love with. If you're coming from Huawei, from Honor, from Samsung, from Apple, you don't like this more vignetting or maybe a little bit vignetting, but not this like too much contrasty kind of look, more brighter kind of look, Find X9 Ultra is your friend with this color profile here, the default one in the master mode. But you can change this, of course, and I show you this is how you can get very close. You can add the contrast and you get a very close kind of look. It's just vignetting, you cannot like make it more vignetting on the Find X9 Ultra just as a standard vignetting. But yeah, 70 versus 70, it's a crop again on the X300 Ultra and it's non-crop here. So yes, in terms of detail wise, it's a win for the Oppo. Just this one here is just a test of the selfie cameras. This is one thing that is cool on the X300 Ultra, the humanistic street mode. You can also take selfies, I think. Was it in humanistic street mode? I have to double check the humanistic street mode. No, it's not the humanistic street mode. The color profile that I chose here, the textured one, you can also use in selfie mode, where sadly on the Oppo Find X9 Ultra, it is using its default mode whenever you switch to the selfie, which is a bit cumbersome. In comparison, both are doing well here, but still I would prefer the Oppo for the selfie shots. Now let's go to another shot, just one comparison with all the people who say, yeah, you can turn off the sharpness at the Vivo X300 Ultra, but you're complaining about the too much over sharpening on the X300 Ultra, you can just turn it down. This is the default sharpening that we have on the X300 Ultra in comparison to the master mode of the Oppo. And you see how much more softer it is appearing on the Oppo there. It's playing also with the contrast, maybe set it a bit too high there, still on the Oppo. How much softer it is. And when you go Vivo and go to the mode and configure the sharpness to -100, this is what you get. It's still sharper, it's still a bit sharpening up. It's looking way better, however. So if you have problems with, hey, this is way too sharp, -100 fix for the X300 Ultra. And this is the reason why I can tell you the X300 Ultra is still on top, because it has this option to change this sharpening. And by default on the Oppo, you can only do it in master mode, I think. So that's it. Hopefully not too long for you. The default main camera, which is the ultra wide angle on the Vivo X300 Ultra. What do you think about this one here? Internal mic is always walking towards the light. And do we have the lights dancing? I think the X300 Ultra has finally fixed that, and we have a little bit of like yeah, situation here under the light. What do you think about the lens coating? Light now in the background. How well is this working here? Internal mics. And what do you think walking towards the dark and now turning around towards the light? Is the stutter gone that the previous version still had? Okay, video now on the Oppo Find X9 Ultra, walking towards the light. Internal mics like always. And what do you think about the quality here? Is the light dancing in the background? Standing under the light? How good is the coating here of the lens? The light now in the background. Is my face still exposed nicely? What do you think? Walking towards the dark and now turning around towards the light. What do you think about the Oppo Find X9 Ultra?
When it comes to night photos, I was a bit surprised to see that we get a better ultra-wide angle photo on the Find X9 Ultra. And when I went to the 100% view, I was also surprised to see that HDR apparently is a little bit better on the Find X9 Ultra. That must be some issue with me, because I was using Zeiss Natural here colors on the Vivo, and apparently that leads to less HDR-y kind of look. Anyway, when you take a second look and take a look at the detail levels, however, you see how much more sharpening, how much more editing, how much more artificial the Find X9 Ultra looks like, and how cleaner the Vivo looks like, especially here towards the side. Look at the license plate, at the car, for example, much more natural looking there on the Vivo X300 Ultra. So yeah, this one, the ultra wide angle, even though it looks a little bit darker than the Find X9 Ultra, it also looks a little bit more realistic. Doesn't have so much chromatic aberrations and doesn't have so much light issues there. You see that's tiny bit, but it's like not as pronounced as it is on the Oppo. We take a look at the main camera sensor, almost the same kind of thing going on here, a lot brighter on the Oppo. The Vivo a lot darker, actually more towards what reality shows, but also a little bit overexposed for some reason, where we have like nice exposure here. 12 megapixels on the Oppo in this case because it was too dark, and of course we have 35mm here. You can see how much more natural the Vivo looks like there. So if I crop in a little bit here, you have something that you can compare. You see also that the Vivo looks a little bit better there. But even if we go to the 100% view here and zoom out one here, you also see that the Vivo looks better. It's just with the HDR again, you see that the Vivo has a bit of a downfall there. So at least in this, it is not producing the same kind of level as the Oppo is doing. But they're very, very, very close together here, those two sensors there. And here I would even argue, yes, it's a bit sharpened up there on the Oppo for sure, but I don't see it just like the same difference that I saw with the ultra-wide angle, where it was just simply more natural and more details on the Vivo. I think here they're very comparable, both in terms of detail levels, both using the same sensor there, and the sensor of the Oppo is pretty much comparable to a 1-inch type sensor. So the Vivo as well, it's just that the processing is different. It is more natural, this processing here. Keeping this a bit darker, for example, here it's brightening these things up. Detail levels here, detail levels there. It's quite interesting to see that they're basically on par there. When we check out the telezoom, 85 versus 70mm, I was a bit surprised also seeing this bit weaker kind of processing, where the Oppo has a bit more aggressive processing with more sharpening applied to the signs here, for example. Both are readable, both in terms of detail levels, probably the same. It's just that here now the light had much more, like the HDR again is like much more processed differently here, and this is like overblown everything here, where here it is still keeping it intact somehow. This is yellow shining, which nope, it was red because I was taking this shot at the same time. You can see people taking the shot as well with their phone. And then we check out here, you can also see that the Oppo has better HDR there and keeping the sign in balance, even though not perfect. And when we take a look at the detail levels here as well, this is where I would directly say, even though it's more cropped in on the Vivo, this is a win for the Oppo. When we go a bit further now to 10 times, then it's redeeming itself a little bit. The Vivo is getting very good there with this, but the colors are glowing, and you see the Edeka sign there in comparison to what the Oppo is doing. The Oppo is better there. It has this dedicated sensor, but also the main sensor that we have there is a little bit larger that we saw earlier, and with its dedicated sensor that was in use, as you see here by the f-stop number, it cannot beat the Oppo. The Vivo cannot beat the Oppo. And when we zoom in even further, this is now 30x, so 690mm on both. Both do a fantastic job here, and it's really hard to decide between those two now at this focal length. It's just like a matter of detail levels. And here I think, because here the AI is playing a big role, here the AI is inventing stuff on the Vivo side a lot, where here this is the correct way of how the logo around the pretzel is looking like for this bakery. However, here, for example, the AI was doing a little bit of better job with the fitness logo, where it's a bit of an issue here. But in general, I think the slight edge towards the tele-sensor goes, especially for longer zooms at night, goes towards the Oppo. And now let's check the selfie. Selfie much warmer on the X300 Ultra, which actually I prefer a little bit more than this whitish kind of on the Find X9 Ultra. Both roughly the same, so 24 and 25mm, so cropped in on the Find X9 Ultra a little bit. And what you see here is a little bit more processed eyebrows on the Oppo, a little bit less processed looking there on the Vivo. It's hard to decide. I think they should be on par there when it comes to the selfies at night. Don't see much of a difference between them. A bit of autofocus area there between those two. So I think I have to raise the Vivo selfie points there a little bit, because here at the night it is definitely doing a very good job there and beating, I think, the Oppo. So these are the night shots. Ranking and conclusion, TLDR, the Vivo X300 Ultra stays the camera smartphone king with a scoring of 9.7, where we have the Oppo Find X9 Ultra with a scoring of 9.6, very close together. We really have to look at the detail levels to see where they shine, where the differences are. Main camera sensor, I had to go a bit down on the X300 Ultra because it had some issues with HDR. I was checking out different settings there, even vivid. I was checking refined and size natural, and always the HDR was worse at daylight on the Find X9 Ultra, and even at nighttime it was worse on the X300 Ultra. Ultra wide angle is much better there on the X300 Ultra. It is using the main camera sensor basically. It's the same as last year, so nothing has changed there for the ultra wide angle, but at the same time zoom performance is a tiny bit better on the Find X9 Ultra thanks to its dedicated 10x zoom lens. You see it at night, you see it at daylight, as well as if you zoom in a bit even further, the Find X9 Ultra is really winning. If you zoom in, 85 and a little bit in this category there, the Oppo Find X9 Ultra can surprisingly keep up with the X300 Ultra that I was not expecting. It's not always happening like this, but in my tests, most of the time you don't notice a difference, and that's a compliment to the X9 Ultra system. And this is also the defaults that it's using, 25 megapixels, and then you get roughly the same crop out as the X300 Ultra with 85 at 12 megapixels. So that's quite fascinating to see that the Oppo Find X9 Ultra can keep up and even surpass, even it's by a small margin, the X300 Ultra. Video recording, however, it's a clear win for the Find X9 Ultra. First of all, stabilization on the selfie cam is much better. The main camera, against the main camera of the X300 Ultra we don't have to compete, but also ultra wide angle, I think the X300 Ultra is doing a slightly bit better job there. It's just the more convenient way of zooming in, zooming in further. The Find X9 Ultra is performing there a little bit better, and especially at nighttime, the X300 Ultras, because it always notoriously was bad on the X100 series of Vivos, but now against the Find X9 Ultra, there's no chance at nighttime. Video recording is a slightly bit better there on the Find X9 Ultra. Portrait mode is also a tiny bit better on the Find X9 Ultra. Both get a score of 9.7, so they're basically equal. But I have a dedicated portrait video comparison if you're interested in this, because I was not doing this here because it would be too long this video here. So check this out, but it's a tiny bit better than the Find X9 Ultra, where the X300 Ultra looks a little bit processed, and especially on the higher zoom levels. You can do portrait at 10x, for example, with 10x dedicated sensor, or the Find X9 Ultra, and this is working much nicer than on the Vivo X300 Ultra. Selfies and camera, I at the end decided to raise the points on the X300 Ultra here, but not to the point where I would give it more points or even equal points to the Find X9 Ultra. Basic reasoning is that at nighttime, yes, the X300 Ultra looked a little bit better than the Find X9 Ultra, but most of the time selfies are done at daylight. And at daylight, the Find X9 Ultra is a lot better than the X300 Ultra, a lot more natural, a lot more clear, a lot more detailed. And this is why I have to give it a little bit more points here. You can see the scoring system says 9.3 and 9.4, but you see the index score is 4.65 versus 4.7, so it's not a huge difference. Both you will be happy with, but I have to choose a winner here, and the Find X9 Ultra most of the time delivers better results than the X300 Ultra for the selfie cam. We don't have to discuss about camera and extra features, because this is a thing that I raised the points as well on the X300 Ultra. They even have now a lens calibration for the telephoto lens. It's crazy the amount of customizations and options that you can set up there. And the camera UI is also overhauled, looking very nice to use one-handed if you get the grip out of it. At my first comparison I didn't, so this is why I didn't raise the points there, but now I got it, and yes, the points are, it's the best camera UI that you can get, and almost the best in terms of extra features that you can get on the Vivo X300 Ultra. So where does it end up now? In my camera ranking list, you can see the X300 Ultra is sitting on top there, and you'll notice that the camera ranking list has some icons there, as well as the best overall icon here for the overall winner, and then there's another icon there, there's another icon there, as you can see. You can think this is a selfie icon, so these are the top 3 in terms of selfies there. Then there's a portrait icon. This is the Oppo Find X9 Ultra is winning the portraits, it's winning the telezoom, and it's winning video here. Actually, what is this icon here? This is, I think, the ultra wide angle. So it's winning the ultra wide angle here as well on the X300 Ultra. What we have here, and yeah, these are the little icons that I add there. You can see now the win of the X300 Ultra is a bit more clearer, also towards the X200 Ultra. It's a 9.7 versus 9.6, but they are so close together. Like you can see 9.6, 9.5, I would say up to 9.3, maybe, yeah, up to 9.3, which is also a lot there, and the Find X7 Ultra, which is also very nice. But all the if it's above 9.3, you will be happy. You have one of the best smartphone cameras on the market right now. And even if you're below that, you still have a very good smartphone camera, like the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, one of the favorites that I had to take photos with, has a 9.2 scoring here. It's still very, very good. So yeah, you'll be happy with that. That is for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Feedback down below. Until the next time. Bye.